It is first and foremost my absolute pleasure to introduce the incoming Acting Secretary of Education, John King, who oversees all preschool through 12th grade education policies and programs and strategic initiatives, as well as the operations of the Department of Education. His work focuses on increasing equity, improving educational outcomes, and closing the achievement gaps. He also oversees the department's work overseeing President Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative. And so I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about this and the incredible intersections of the work that you're doing and the Department of Education. And it's my pleasure to introduce John King. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Good morning. It is good to be here with all of you. Appreciate the kind introduction. Grateful to the Council of State Governments Justice Center and the Department of Justice for this convening, and what I've heard has been a very successful and thoughtful conversation. I'm pleased to be here on behalf of the Education Department and the President's My Brother's Keeper initiative, because we know that education is going to be central to how we address the many challenges that we face as a country, particularly the challenges that are an artifact of mass incarceration. As everyone in this room understands, the United States has distinguished itself in the world in an unfortunate way by having incarceration rates that are 5 to 10 times higher than other democracies. We have created a crisis through a series of policy judgments that misinterpreted what would be best to serve the country. We have chosen a strategy of mass incarceration rather than a strategy of education, development, and support. We have set up criminal justice policies that trap folks in lives without options. And we have set up policies, unfortunately, in many of our schools that begin with criminalizing student misbehavior in schools in a way that leads to a school-to-prison pipeline. And the evidence is overwhelming that these policies are not serving the country well, they are not serving our communities well, and they actually are not accomplishing the objective of improving quality of life and ensuring public safety. And so the question is, so what do we do about that, and what's the role of the Education Department in that? So I just want to share a few thoughts on that. We are pleased to be very close partners with the Department of Justice. Carol Mason has been an extraordinary partner to the department in a variety of initiatives that we are working on to address these issues. We begin with juvenile justice. Many students, many young people make a mistake as a young person, and that mistake gets their lives off track in a way from which they cannot recover. So we have provided guidance to states to ensure that they understand that the students in juvenile justice facilities, young people in juvenile justice facilities, are entitled to a quality education while they are there. We are working through our Office of Special Education to ensure that states monitor whether or not our juvenile justice facilities are providing special education services to the juveniles who are there. In many cases, the students who find themselves in juvenile justice facilities have disabilities that have been diagnosed, but in many cases they have disabilities that have not been diagnosed. And if we fail to provide appropriate services while they are in those facilities, we are again setting them up not for success but for failure. We are working to ensure that once we have folks who've made a mistake and are in prison, that we, again, create opportunity there. I was pleased this summer to join Secretary Duncan and Attorney General Lynch to announce the restoration of Pell Grants for folks who are incarcerated. It's because of hard work of folks in this room and on this stage, tremendous advocacy, that we were able to get to a place where we could use our experimental authority under the Higher Education Act to allow folks who are incarcerated to access Pell Grants so they can pursue higher education. The evidence is overwhelming that education programs, while folks are incarcerated, increase the likelihood that they will return successfully to the community, reduce the likelihood that they will again engage with the criminal justice system. We were pleased that we've had over 200 colleges and universities apply for permission to use Pell Grants to serve folks who are incarcerated, and we look forward later this spring to making an announcement of which institutions will receive that opportunity, and we look forward to continuing to work with Congress to reevaluate the mistake that was made in the mid-90s to bar access to Pell for folks who are incarcerated. We are also working on reentry grant programs with the intention of strong reentry programs that ensure continuity between the educational experiences and job training experiences folks are having while incarcerated as they move back into the community. And one of the key elements of the reentry grants that we have awarded is a focus on continuity and support rather than a short-term, quick-fix mentality. We know that it's not just about the educational experience or the job training. It is about ensuring that that experience is embedded in a set of wraparound services, the opportunity to get a job, the opportunity to get housing, the opportunity to continue education after leaving a facility. And so we want to continue to invest in those. We recently announced a new set of reentry grants, and we will shortly announce a new set of juvenile justice reentry grants that are focused on folks who are in juvenile justice facilities having access to career and technical education and other training, job readiness, and school readiness opportunities. Ultimately, part of what we've got to acknowledge as a country is that we have taken the wrong path, and the right thing is to change our path. We have over 5 million kids in this country whose parents have been or are currently incarcerated, and that's probably an underestimate. The impact on families of mass incarceration has been devastating. And we know that the young people whose parents have been incarcerated are significantly more likely to have adverse childhood experiences. They are significantly more likely to experience struggles in school and their life outside of school. If we want to create a just society, if we want to ensure equality of opportunity, we have to think differently about how we approach criminal justice, and we have to integrate how we approach criminal justice with how we approach educational opportunity. We need to make sure that folks who've served their time and paid their debt to society are able to return to society with a full range of opportunities, contribute to their community, and contribute to their families. This summer, when we made the announcement about the Second Chance Pell Program, we spent some time at Jessup Prison in Maryland. The Goucher program there is an example of a strong higher ed prison partnership. And one of the things that was so striking about the time we were there was talking with the students about how the educational experience was transforming not only their lives, but their families' lives. The students talked about how little belief they had in themselves and what they could accomplish before they participated in the educational programs, and now how they had a vision of themselves as future college graduates, the contributions they wanted to make in the workforce. But they also talked about the impact that their experience as college students while incarcerated has had on their families, and the ways in which it has allowed them to talk with their children about the power of education, the potential of education, to talk with their children about the experience of both being students. There's a transformative power in education, and we've got to put that front and center in our strategy to respond to our criminal justice challenges. If we look at criminal justice reform just as about sentencing reform, that will be a necessary but not sufficient strategy to improve outcomes. We've got to make sure that folks have access to education, job training, employment, housing, and the support they need to be successful in the community. So I'm so grateful that you all are gathered here, grateful for the work that you do, look forward to our continued partnership. We bring to this work a tremendous sense of urgency and a belief that doing this work well, ensuring second chances, is fundamentally about who we are as Americans. It is about what we believe as Americans about equality of opportunity. So thank you for your time, thank you for being here, and I look forward to hearing more about the work ahead.
So So I just want to reflect for a second that in this conference, we have had senior members of our president's administration. We've had 3 leaders of cabinet-level agencies talking to us from the Department of Justice, the Department of Education, and Housing and Urban Development. And I think that is an amazing moment to be talking about reentry and to be talking about building our communities. And so I think we should really celebrate this opportunity. And we should also be talking about the amazing leadership that we've had from Congress and that we've had from our legislative leaders in the Fed and the folks that have been really doing this work. Before there was a Second Chance Act, there was Representative Danny Davis. Before we were able to really get this monumental piece of legislation off of the ground, one of many sort of pieces of work that we need to do to bring our communities together and to really focus on the lives of people who are returning, Danny Davis worked as a tireless champion to make that legislation happen, and is in large part the reason that we are all here in this room right now. And we are so pleased to have him here with us this morning to give you a welcome and to talk to you a little bit about what's going on here in the Congress and as well as what's going on with the ongoing work of the Second Chance Act. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce Representative Danny Davis.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I've always been told that life is but a minute, just 60 seconds in it, forced upon us. We didn't seek it, and we didn't choose it. But thank God each one of us can determine how we use it. We suffer if we abuse it. Just a tiny minute, but eternity is in it. Let me first of all thank you for that very warm and kind introduction. You said some good things about me, and I appreciate that. Of course, my mother always told us that flattery, like perfume, is to be smelled and not swallowed. Those of you in the audience, let me thank you for your kind and warm applause. You know, being a politician, usually, if I get applause at the end of a presentation, it means that the audience is being kind. If I get something in the middle of a presentation, it usually means that the audience has hope. And that is, they're hoping that the second part is better than the first. But if I get something before the presentation, then I call that faith. And I guess faith is so important to a group like yours. Because if you didn't have faith, I don't think you'd be engaged in the kind of work that you do. And so I'm pleased to be here with the Council of State Governments Justice Center as we review and continue to search for the most effective ways to reduce mass incarceration. It's good to be here and to congratulate our new Secretary of Education, because I think that education is so important in this process. As a matter of fact, a lot of people had a lot of interesting things to say about education. Abraham Lincoln used to say that education makes a man easy to lead but difficult to drive, easy to govern but impossible to enslave. Malcolm X had some thoughts about education, and he said that education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare today. Harriet Tubman had something, though, that I liked. She said that some folks don't like education because it makes fools out of people. But then she said, I know more fools who don't have any. So I guess if you got to be a fool, it's best to be an educated fool. But I want to commend the Justice Center for the outstanding work it does. And I want to thank all of you because you are on the cutting edge of major social change and human redevelopment in our country. You're on the ground, in the trenches, where the rubber hits the road. You're doing what others talk about, what others suggest and hope for. You put into action. I want to thank the center for putting me on at this early hour. It reminds me of my father, who used to tell my brother and I that early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Of course, when we became teenagers, we changed the script a little bit. And when we say, yeah, but now, Dad, it's early to bed, early to rise, and the girls go out with the other guys. But I guess we do have some early votes today, and hopefully we're going to be taking two very important votes today and tomorrow. We're going to vote on tax extenders, and we're also going to vote so that we've got a budget and don't have to keep living on 2- and 3-day resolutions where we never know if we're going to actually have money to spend or the authority to spend it. So I'm thankful. But I'm enjoying what's going on here. And I'm enjoying it because, as I said earlier, you are indeed on the cutting edge. Yes, we all know that we are the most incarcerated nation on the face of the earth. Whether we're talking about percentage of population, proportion of population, or actual numbers, even countries whose populations don't even approach being that of ours, we have more people incarcerated than what they do. But I've always been told that rather than cursing the darkness, we ought to try and light a candle. And trying to develop Second Chance was nothing more than trying to light a candle, trying to find a way to assure that a larger proportion of our population could think not in terms of what yesterday might have been, but of what tomorrow has the potential to be. You know, the blues singer said that yesterday is dead and gone. Tomorrow is out of sight. It's so sad to be alone. I need somebody to help me make it through the night. And many of the individuals that Second Chance purports to help are those people who are saying essentially the same thing. We are proud of the fact that more than 600 grants have been provided to all kinds of different organizations and groups, that thousands of individuals have been positively impacted. The one thing that we have learned about this business of reentry is that practically any help that individuals receive is better than having no help at all. Whether it's anger management, whether it's skill development, whether it's learning to read, write, and do arithmetic. Even though we have computers and calculators, there are still some fundamentals that people need to have. But helping to establish and hold on to self-esteem. I have come into contact with so many individuals who have hit rock bottom and have absolutely and in totality changed their lives around. And many of you have been the helpmates for that. Many of you have provided the feeling of hope and possibility, and you've provided understanding of what one needs to do. No, it is not easy, but nobody ever promised us a rose garden. All I want to do this morning is say thank you. I want to not only welcome you, but I want to thank you because you are helping to make America a better place in which to live. When I think of the work that you do, I think of a story about a fellow who was walking along the beach, and he was picking up starfish and throwing them into the ocean. Another fellow was walking behind him and he couldn't figure out what he was doing. Finally, his curiosity got the best of him. So he walked up to him and says, "Pardon me, sir, but could you tell me what you're doing?" He said, "Well, I'm throwing these starfish back into the ocean because when they hit the water, they oxidate and they have life." So the fellow say, "Yeah, I understand that." Say, "But you know, there are thousands of beaches all over the world, and there are millions of starfish on the beach. Do you think it really makes a difference what you're doing?" So the fellow just reached down, grabbed another one, threw it in the ocean. It went plump. He said it made a difference to that one. He reached down, grabbed another one, threw it in. He said it made a difference to that one. Everything that you do makes a difference to somebody. And I'm just here to say thank you and keep on doing what you do. God bless you all. It's time to go.